The groom slapped the bride in front of everyone and had no clue what was coming next. Ava Bennett had spent the last decade carving out a name for herself in Los Angeles. As one of the top plastic surgeons in Beverly Hills, she'd worked on the faces of Oscar winners, tech moguls, and politicians. Her clinic was more than just a business. It was a quiet sanctuary known for its exclusivity. People waited months just to get an appointment, and her patients didn't just come for the results. They trusted her, admired her, respected her. She had become part of an elite world where power was measured in awards, headlines, and who could get the best table at the hottest spots in town. Still, even with all her success, there was always this quiet, unshakable feeling like she didn't quite belong. No matter how far she'd come, she still had to prove herself twice as hard, and even in supposedly progressive circles, it was clear she was seen as an exception, not the norm. Then came William Cavendish. They met at a fundraiser for the Hollywood Diversity Initiative, a fancy event filled with the same people who often stood in the way of actual progress. He'd caught her near the silent auction table, confidence radiating off him like it was effortless. William was the youngest son of Gregory Cavendish, a Hollywood heavyweight known for producing big, bold, often controversial films. His name carried serious weight in the industry. His father's movies claimed to tell honest black stories, but usually through a lens that made white audiences feel like the heroes. Still, William seemed different. Educated, thoughtful, smooth with his words. He talked about breaking down stereotypes and pushing for real diversity in film. And when he looked at her, she felt truly seen, like he actually got what she'd been through. Their relationship took off fast. Within months, everyone in Hollywood was talking about them. To the outside world, they were the dream couple, glamorous, powerful, progressive. But underneath all the praise, Ava noticed the cracks. The compliments she got often felt backhanded, more like surprise than admiration. At events, she was introduced as William's fiancée before anyone mentioned her achievements. Her identity, her work, her entire journey reduced to a side note. At first, she thought the Cavendishes were welcoming her into the family. Gregory had that old-school charm, always cracking jokes about how lucky his son was. Charlotte, his wife, played the perfect society woman, offering help with the wedding and sending invites to high-profile lunches. But the more time Ava spent around them, the more she realized something was off. She wasn't being embraced for who she was. She was being used as a symbol, proof that the Cavendishes were with the times. They brought her to private gatherings, seated her next to powerful studio execs who wanted to look like they cared about inclusion. They'd say things like, "Hollywood needs more voices like yours," then go back to ignoring black-led projects. She could see it clearly now. She wasn't a person to them. She was a statement, a convenient piece in their PR machine. When the engagement went public, it became even more obvious. The announcement was a full-blown media event. Magazine covers, Instagram posts, interviews, everything staged to perfection. The couple glowing in golden Napa Valley light, the headlines gushing, "Hollywood royalty to marry groundbreaking black surgeon," a love story that will redefine the industry. But the story wasn't really about her. It was about what she represented. The media barely touched on her accomplishments or their actual relationship. It was all about the image, the optics. The Cavendishes had turned their son's engagement into proof that they were champions of diversity. Ava tried to brush it off. She loved William. He wasn't like his parents. He had promised they would create something real, something authentic. So when he proposed at the Producers Guild dinner, surrounded by flashing cameras and industry royalty, she said yes. The engagement ring, a stunning custom piece from Cartier, caught the light of every camera in the room. Applause filled the air, and for a brief moment, Ava let herself believe everything was okay. She shoved her doubts to the back of her mind, but deep inside, she knew. She had seen Gregory Cavendish share a quick, meaningful glance with a studio exec, as if closing a business deal, not celebrating a proposal. She had heard Charlotte telling a reporter how thrilled they were to welcome a strong, intelligent black woman into the family, like Ava was some kind of carefully chosen addition to their brand. Still, Ava clung to the idea that love could fix it all. As the wedding drew closer, the pressure became overwhelming. The Cavendishes took over nearly every aspect of the planning, determined to make it the most talked-about event of the year. Every detail was meticulously chosen, from the guest list to the playlist, everything tailored to perfection. But with every decision they made, Ava felt herself fading. William wasn't the same either. The man who once spoke passionately about change and authenticity was becoming moody and short-tempered. He brushed her off more often, snapping at her in private, then turning on the charm the moment they were around others. When she tried to talk to him about how the wedding felt more like a PR campaign than a celebration, he waved her off, accusing her of reading too much into things. The first time he grabbed her wrist too hard during an argument, she froze. He apologized right away, blaming stress, and she had tried to believe him. But now, standing in her suite at the Four Seasons on the night before the wedding, staring at her reflection in a gold-framed mirror, all she felt was fear. Not fear of marriage itself, or of the media circus waiting outside, but of the man she was about to marry. A knock on the door made her jump. Her best friend, Holly Matthews, walked in, barefoot and annoyed, tossing her designer heels aside. "Traffic was hell," she muttered, collapsing onto the velvet chaise. But when she saw Ava's face, how tense she looked, how tightly she was gripping the delicate lace on her sleeve, Holly's tone changed. "Ava," she said gently, "are you sure about this?" Ava opened her mouth, but before she could answer, there was another knock. Charlotte Cavendish entered, calm and polished as always. "Darling," she said with that rehearsed smile, "the lawyers just need you to review and sign a few last-minute changes to the prenup." A cold shiver ran through Ava. She had ignored her gut for too long, and tomorrow, in front of half of Hollywood, she knew she'd regret it. She adjusted the diamond earring dangling from her ear and took one last glance at herself in the mirror. The suite was lavish, luxury she had gotten used to over the past few months, but it didn't feel like her. Her gown, a sleek old Hollywood style picked out by Charlotte, hugged her perfectly, yet it screamed someone else's taste. Every part of this wedding reflected the Cavendish brand more than it did her. The rehearsal dinner was set to happen at the Cavendish estate in Beverly Hills. It wasn't some warm family gathering. It was a major industry event. Studio heads, A-list directors, political figures, everyone on the guest list had a reason to be there. It was all part of a narrative, a power move. Holly, now dressed in a sharp black dress, stood by the window scrolling through her phone. "You saw who's coming tonight, right?" she asked without looking up. Ava exhaled, already knowing where the conversation was headed. "Holly." "I'm just saying," Holly said, turning to face her. "Why is it that almost everyone invited is either a producer, an exec, or some politician? Isn't this supposed to be about you two, not a press event?" Ava didn't argue because she knew Holly was right. This wasn't about love. This was about appearances. Holly stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Look, I get it. William's a big deal, and yeah, marrying into the Cavendishes means something in this town. But doesn't it bother you that your own family and friends are barely on the list? What are they, 10%? Ava didn't answer. She just looked back at herself in the mirror and forced a smile. "It's just one night," she said quietly, though she couldn't tell if she was trying to convince Holly or herself. Holly didn't push it. She just nodded and let it go. They left the hotel in one of the black cars the Cavendishes had arranged. The ride to the estate was quiet. Ava stared out the window, watching the city lights blur as they passed. She wanted to believe Holly was being dramatic, but deep down, something didn't sit right. Something felt wrong. The Cavendish estate looked like something out of a movie, massive, elegant, and dripping with money. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and priceless art lined the walls. The second Ava walked in, she felt the weight of dozens of eyes sizing her up. The room buzzed with quiet power, filled with people who had built empires on closed-door deals and unspoken favors. Charlotte was the first to greet her, gliding over in a flawless emerald gown, diamonds glittering on her wrist as she reached for Ava's hands. "Darling, you look absolutely stunning," she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you," Ava replied, forcing herself to smile back. Gregory was nearby, deep in conversation with a senator, but he nodded at her in silent acknowledgement as she walked by. This was it, her final entrance into their world. No turning back now. She spotted William near the bar, chatting with a big-name director. He always moved through rooms like he owned them, because, in a way, he did. His father had groomed him for this life, but when his eyes met hers, something shifted. His expression darkened just for a second. He walked over, smile in place, but cold around the edges. "You're late," he whispered, leaning in so no one else could hear. Ava blinked, caught off guard. "It's just a few minutes." His hand pressed against her waist, just a little too hard. "Tonight matters. You know that." She took a breath, keeping her expression calm. "Of course," she said, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Let's go say hi." William held her gaze for a moment, then loosened his grip. To everyone else, they looked like any engaged couple sharing a quick word. But Ava felt the warning in his touch. The dinner was just as over the top as she'd expected. Multiple courses of gourmet food, champagne flowing endlessly, conversations full of fake compliments and veiled competition. Ava sat beside William, nodding through another executive's monologue about his latest visionary project. Across the table, Holly watched her closely. Her best friend had been keeping her distance, but Ava could see the worry in her eyes. Then came the moment that shifted everything. One of the older producers, someone long tied to the Cavendishs, leaned toward her with a smug smile. Swirling his wine, he asked, "Nervous about tomorrow?" Ava smiled politely. "More excited than anything," she replied. He chuckled. "Well, you know how it goes. Hollywood marriages tend to flop faster than a bad sequel." The men at the table laughed. Ava's jaw tensed. Holly cleared her throat. "I think we can all agree Ava and William aren't your average Hollywood couple." "Oh, of course," the man said, still smirking. "But let's be real. This whole thing, it's a PR jackpot." The laughter quieted. The air tightened. Ava tilted her head slightly. "I'm sorry. What do you mean?" He shrugged as if it were obvious. "Come on. A Cavendish marrying a brilliant black woman? Perfect timing. It's exactly the kind of image Hollywood wants right now. Progress, diversity, all that." Ava's stomach turned. She waited for William to say something, anything, to shut it down. But he didn't. He just sipped his drink and smirked. Something inside her snapped. "So let me get this straight," Ava said, her voice low and steady. "You think my relationship is just for show?" The producer chuckled. "Hey, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, just saying it works." Before Ava could fire back, William's hand clamped down on her arm beneath the table. Hard. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned to him slowly. His face was unreadable. "Let's not make this a thing," he murmured. "Let's just enjoy the evening." She stared at him, stunned. He wasn't upset by what the man had said. He was upset at her, for responding. The realization hit like ice in her chest. Holly pushed back her chair. "Excuse me," she muttered, tossing her napkin on the table. Ava stood too. "I need some air." Outside on the balcony, Holly spun toward her. "Tell me you saw that. Tell me you saw him." Ava exhaled, her voice shaky. "I saw it." But she didn't say anything else, because for the first time she didn't know what to say. Inside, William was still laughing, acting like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just left a bruise on her arm, like he hadn't sat there silently while someone reduced her to a headline. Ava felt something shift inside her. She had spent so long convincing herself William was different, that he wasn't like his family. But now, standing outside that grand dining room, she wasn't so sure. The next morning, she woke up with a dull ache in her arm, a bruise blooming beneath her skin where he'd grabbed her. The night before played in her mind like a loop she couldn't shut off. The producer's smug grin, the laughter echoing around the table, and William's hand gripping her arm like a silent command. It all kept playing in her head. The sinking feeling in her stomach hadn't let up. She sat up in bed, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Outside her suite at the Four Seasons, the morning sun poured over Los Angeles, the city already humming with life. Today was supposed to be her wedding day. A knock at the door made her jump. Holly walked in, still in her silk robe, holding a cup of coffee. One look at Ava's face and her expression changed. "You didn't sleep, did you?" Ava shook her head. "Not a minute." Holly sat beside her, setting the coffee down. "We need to talk about last night." Ava sighed. "I know." Holly gently took Ava's arm and rolled up her sleeve. A faint bruise was already forming where William had grabbed her. Holly muttered a curse under her breath. "This isn't okay," she said, her voice firm. "I know," Ava said softly, "but if I walk away now, they'll bury you." Holly cut in, her tone sharp. Ava didn't need to ask who they were. The Cavendishes weren't just a family. They were a brand, an empire. They had the power to crush anyone who got in their way. If she left, they wouldn't just cover it up. They'd twist the story to make it her fault. "They'll spin it," Ava whispered. "Make it look like I got cold feet or that I was unstable." "They won't just spin it," Holly replied. "They'll ruin you." Just then, as if the universe wanted to prove her point, there was another knock. Ava and Holly exchanged a look. Slowly, Ava got up and opened the door. Charlotte Cavendish stood there, perfectly put together in a flawless ivory dress, holding a sleek leather folder. "Good morning, darling," she said, gliding into the room without waiting for an invite. Holly stood up, arms crossed, clearly not in the mood for small talk. Charlotte barely glanced at her. "I just wanted a quick word before the ceremony," Charlotte said calmly, placing the folder on the desk near the window. "Just a few final things to go over." "Final things?" Ava asked, her voice cool. Charlotte offered a tight smile. "Legal formalities." Ava's stomach dropped. She already knew what was coming. "The prenup," Charlotte confirmed with a nod. "Just a few last-minute updates." Holly scoffed. "Last-minute changes? On the morning of the wedding?" Charlotte didn't react. Gregory's lawyers added a few clauses about asset protection. Nothing unusual, but Ava wasn't buying it. She knew how the Cavendishes operated, how every word in every contract was carefully crafted to protect what was theirs. No one, not even family, was exempt. She opened the folder. The pages were dense with legalese, but a few phrases jumped out immediately. If she divorced William, she'd walk away with nothing. No spousal support, no property, no shared assets. If she ever spoke out about the marriage, she'd be liable for defamation. If she accused him of abuse, she'd be forced into arbitration under mediators chosen by the Cavendishes. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just a prenup, it was a trap. She set the papers down, hands trembling. "This isn't what I originally agreed to." Charlotte tilted her head slightly, still smiling. It's just a formality, dear. Ava locked eyes with her. And what if I don't sign it? For the first time, Charlotte's mask slipped, just a little. She sighed, like a parent talking to a stubborn child. Ava, we both know that wouldn't be in your best interest. Holly stepped forward. Did you just threaten her? Charlotte let out a breath, looking faintly amused. Of course not. But they all knew. If Ava refused, the Cavendishes would come after her. They'd crush her reputation, freeze her out of Hollywood, and spin the story so no one would believe her. She wouldn't just lose William, she'd lose everything. Ava thought of the smug producer from last night, the way he talked about her relationship like it was part of a marketing campaign. She thought of William sitting there, letting it happen. Her hands curled into fists. She drew a steady breath and looked back at Charlotte. I need time to read this properly. Charlotte's smile faltered. Of course, but the ceremony is in a few hours. Don't take too long. She turned and swept out of the suite, just as calm and collected as when she'd entered. As soon as the door closed, Holly exploded. Are you freaking kidding me? Ava, this isn't just some shady contract. This is a damn trap. Ava rubbed her temples. I know. Holly's voice was gentle but serious. So what are you going to do? Ava took a shaky breath. She was at a crossroads. She could sign the prenup, go through with the wedding, and become Mrs. William Cavendish, the picture-perfect wife with no voice and no way out. Or she could walk away, not just from William, but from the entire life she'd been preparing for. But leaving wouldn't be quiet. It wouldn't be simple. It would be a war. Holly's tone softened. Ava, you can't go through with this. Ava turned toward the window, eyes locked on the city below. The Cavendishes had done everything they could to break her before the ceremony even started. But what they didn't see coming was this. Ava Bennett had never been the type to be owned. And if they thought she was just going to disappear quietly, they had no idea what they were dealing with. She stood there gripping the curtain, the prenup still sitting unopened on the desk behind her. It felt like the walls were closing in. Holly was pacing, frustration showing in every step. Please tell me you're not actually considering signing that thing, she said, stopping suddenly. Ava kept her eyes on the skyline. If I don't, they'll ruin me. They're already trying to, Holly snapped. That contract proves it. She was right. Every clause was a trap, crafted to silence her, to strip her of any protection or rights. If things ever went bad, Ava would be completely on her own. Ava turned to Holly. If I'm going to walk away, I need a plan. I can't just leave and let them frame me as some hysterical woman who cracked under pressure. Holly crossed her arms. So what do we do? Ava's thoughts raced. William's outburst at dinner, the smug producer's comment, the laughter that followed. This is a PR dream. None of it had been about love. It had always been about the image. The Cavendishes had used her to polish their brand, and now they wanted to make sure she couldn't change the story. But what if she could? Her heart pounded as an idea took root. We dig, she said quietly. We find everything they've been hiding, every skeleton they've locked away. Holly's eyes widened. You want to take them down? Ava nodded. If they're planning to bury me, they better know I bury back. Before they even left the hotel, Holly was already dialing. She had connections, journalists, publicists, private investigators, people who knew how to get the truth, no matter how deep it was buried. Ava knew exactly who she needed to call first. Jason Langley. He was an indie film producer turned investigative bulldog. His exposés had rocked the industry, forcing out predators and blowing the lid off toxic power structures. If anyone could help, it was him. Jason picked up on the second ring. Ava Bennett, he said, sounding curious. Didn't expect to hear from you. Ava looked at Holly and said, I need your help. There was a pause, then Jason replied, Meet me at L'Hermitage in an hour. When they arrived at the hotel's private lounge, Jason was already waiting. He was younger than most producers, but known for punching way above his weight. His films had triggered lawsuits, ruined careers, even led to a few arrests. As Ava slid into the booth across from him, he leaned in. "This about your fiancé?" Ava held his gaze. "And his family." Jason smirked. "Figured something was off. The Cavendishes are pros at making problems vanish." Ava stiffened. "Vanish?" "Not like that," he said quickly. "Not physically, but reputations, businesses, careers, they erase them. If you go against them, you disappear from the industry." Ava already knew, but hearing it out loud made it feel colder, more real. Holly cut in. "We need everything you've got on them, fast." Jason tapped his fingers on the table, thinking. "You want dirt on William, or the whole empire?" "Both," Ava said without blinking. He let out a low whistle. "That's bold." "I don't care," Ava said firmly. Jason studied her for a long moment before nodding. "All right, let's start with William." The deeper they dug, the darker it got. Jason had sources, former assistants, ex-girlfriends, people who'd worked behind the scenes with the Cavendishs. A pattern emerged. William had a violent streak. Several of his exes had seen the same temper Ava had experienced, but they'd all been silenced, with NDAs, settlements, or plain old fear. One of them, Lily Blunt, had been a rising star, a young actress just starting to gain attention when she got involved with William. But when she tried to speak up about what happened between them, everything she had built vanished overnight. "She was blacklisted," Jason explained. "Nobody would cast her. Nobody would even take her calls. One minute she was everywhere, and the next, she didn't exist." Ava's stomach turned. And then there was Gregory Cavendish. Jason's investigation into the family's patriarch revealed decades of dirty secrets. Financial fraud, cover-ups, harassment claims. His production company had a long track record of exploiting black talent, handing out roles that leaned into stereotypes, or casting white saviors in stories that were never theirs to begin with. Even more disturbing, multiple young actresses had accused Gregory of coercion, though none of the stories had ever made it to the public. "They're experts at making things disappear," Jason said, his tone grim. "Just like they're trying to do with you." Ava stared down at the files laid out on the table. She had spent so much time convincing herself that William wasn't like his family, that he was different. But she had been wrong. Holly leaned in. "So, what now?" Ava looked her best friend in the eye. "We show the world everything. Because if the Cavendishes thought she'd go down quietly, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. Time was not on her side. The Cavendishes were powerful, well-connected, and ruthless. If she wanted to bring them down, she had to act fast, before they realized she was coming for them, before they did what they'd done to so many others." Back at the Four Seasons, she sat with Holly, going over every file Jason had collected. Testimonies, financial records, settlements. It was damning, but not bulletproof. "It's not enough," Ava said, rubbing her temples. "Not enough?" Holly asked, looking at the thick stack of papers in disbelief. "Ava, this could ruin them." "Legally? Maybe," Ava replied. "But in Hollywood? They'll spin it. Say it's just bitter exes, people trying to make headlines. They'll survive this, unless we have something they can't cover up or twist." Holly sighed. "So what do we need?" "We need someone from the inside," Ava said. "Someone who worked with them and saw everything." Holly thought for a moment, then grabbed her phone. "I might know someone." 30 minutes later, they had a meeting set. The woman's name was Evelyn Rodriguez, a former executive assistant at Cavendish Pictures. She had worked directly for Gregory Cavendish for nearly 5 years before suddenly walking away. They met her at a quiet cafe tucked away in West Hollywood, discreet and low-key, perfect for a conversation no one should hear. Evelyn arrived in oversized sunglasses and a hoodie, her body tense as she slid into the booth. She didn't order anything. "I don't know why I'm doing this," she muttered, scanning the room nervously. "If anyone finds out—" "They won't," Ava promised. "We just want the truth." Evelyn let out a dry, bitter laugh. "The truth? I spent 5 years protecting a monster? That's the truth?" Ava and Holly exchanged a glance. "I'm guessing you already know about the NDAs, the payoffs," Evelyn said quietly. Ava nodded. "We do, but we need something solid, something they can't dismiss or deny." Evelyn hesitated. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice. "There's a hard drive. Gregory kept everything, emails, financial records, even video files. He thought no one would ever touch him. It's locked away in a private office at the studio." Ava's pulse quickened. "Where exactly?" "You can't just walk in," Evelyn warned. "It's in his executive suite. The room's locked down with biometric security. Only a few people have access." Ava narrowed her eyes. "Does William?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "Yeah, he does." Ava sat back, her mind spinning. This was it, the proof they needed. That night, back in her hotel room, Ava stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. Everything was falling into place. She would get that hard drive. She would blow the whole thing wide open. And when it was over, the Cavendishes wouldn't be able to silence another woman ever again. She could feel the walls closing in. Every move she made, every word she spoke, it felt like someone was watching. She knew it was only a matter of time before they figured out what she was planning. And then, the next morning, she found it. An envelope. No name, no return address, just slipped under her hotel room door. Holly, who'd been staying with Ava for protection, was the first to spot it. "Ava." Her voice was tight as she bent down to pick up the envelope slipped under the door. "You need to see this." Ava took it, a cold feeling already settling in her gut. She tore it open and pulled out a single sheet of paper, a printed internal email from a medical board. It detailed an upcoming investigation into Bennett Aesthetics, Ava's clinic. An investigation that didn't even exist yesterday. Holly cursed under her breath. "They're coming for your career now." Ava swallowed hard. "I figured they would. This is just the beginning. They're going to keep coming until you break," Holly muttered, pacing. But Ava wasn't convinced. The Cavendishes were clearly making their move, but they were doing it quietly. No public statements, no direct confrontations. That meant they still thought they could scare her into backing down. That meant she still had a shot. Her phone buzzed. A text. "William, we need to talk. Lunch?" Ava stared at the screen, heart thudding. After a pause, she typed back, "Fine, noon, Bel Air Hotel." "You're meeting him?" Holly asked, frowning. "I need to know what he knows," Ava said. The Bel Air Hotel was exactly the kind of place people in Hollywood went to disappear. Secluded, lush, private, perfect for conversations no one else was supposed to hear. William was already waiting when Ava arrived, seated at a shaded table on the patio, dressed in a sharp suit. He looked calm, but his eyes gave nothing away. "Ava," he said, flashing a familiar smile as she sat down. "You look beautiful." She didn't respond. He sighed, setting his glass down. "I know you're upset." Ava raised an eyebrow. "You hit me, William, in front of a room full of people." His jaw tightened. "It was a mistake." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "A mistake?" He leaned in, voice low. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the expectations. My father—" "Don't," she cut him off. "Don't make this about him. You had a choice." His nostrils flared, but he forced a smile. "Ava, whatever you're doing, you need to stop." She tilted her head. "And what exactly am I doing?" "Don't play dumb," he said through gritted teeth. "You think I don't know about Jason Langley? About Evelyn?" Her stomach dropped, but she didn't flinch. Sounds like you're nervous. You're making a mistake, William continued. This doesn't end well for you. She folded her hands calmly on the table. For me? He nodded slowly. My family. We don't lose. If you push this, they'll make sure you regret it. There it was. The real William. Ava leaned forward, voice just above a whisper. Your family might win their battles, William, but you? You're already losing. He blinked. Because here's the thing, she went on. Your dad? He's calculated, careful, untouchable. But you? You're impulsive, emotional. You make mistakes. She saw it in his face then, the flicker of doubt, of fear. For the first time, he knew she wasn't afraid anymore. William leaned back, jaw clenched. You're making a big mistake, Ava. She picked up her purse and stood. So are you. Then she walked away, leaving him alone, gripping his glass so tightly his knuckles turned white. That night, the threats got worse. When Ava and Holly returned to the hotel, another envelope was waiting. This time, inside was a photograph. Holly snapped outside a coffee shop earlier that day. She was mid-conversation, clearly unaware she was being watched. Holly's face went pale. Ava? Ava's fists clenched. They're trying to scare us. Well, it's working, Holly whispered, eyes wide. Ava took a deep breath. Then we move faster. The Cavendishes thought they could control the story, but they had underestimated her. Ava wasn't just reacting anymore. She was going on the offensive. She'd always known the Cavendishes played dirty, but now, with the sudden attack on her clinic, the personal threats, the stalking, they weren't just trying to silence her. They wanted to ruin her completely. But she had built her life from nothing. She wasn't about to let them destroy it. Jason's team had been working non-stop, pulling together every thread, every scrap of proof. What they'd uncovered went way beyond William. The documentary wasn't just about an abusive relationship. It was about a dynasty built on fear, lies, and manipulation, a system that crushed anyone who dared to speak out. And now it was ready. Ava sat in the dim editing suite at Jason's production company, watching the final cut play across a large screen. This was more than a film. It was her truth, and it was going to blow the lid off everything the Cavendishes had tried to hide. The documentary, titled Hollywood Privilege, didn't hold anything back. It opened with a glossy montage of the Cavendish family's rise to power. Oscar wins, red carpet glamour, Gregory Cavendish shaking hands with senators and studio heads. Then the shine started to fade. It dove straight into William's violent past, backed by first-hand accounts from multiple women. Gregory's shady financial web unraveled through leaked files and testimonies from former employees. Charlotte's manipulation behind the scenes was laid bare, how she silenced actresses and pulled strings to protect their empire. Then came the footage that shook everything. Jason had secured a video, secretly recorded by a staff member at the rehearsal dinner. Though shaky, the clip clearly showed William striking Ava in front of Hollywood's elite. The audio picked up the stunned silence, the way people turned away, pretending they hadn't seen it. It was chilling, it was raw, and it was proof. Jason glanced over at Ava. Are you absolutely sure? Ava met his eyes without hesitation. I've never been more sure in my life. The film dropped at midnight. Jason's team had planned everything perfectly. It launched on every major streaming platform, landed in inboxes of top journalists, and exploded across social media. Within minutes, it caught fire. By 3 a.m., Hollywood Privilege was trending globally. By 6 a.m., the Cavendish's PR team tried to control the damage, issuing vague, carefully worded statements. But it was too late. By noon, it was everywhere. News outlets ran non-stop coverage. Clips of William hitting Ava played on repeat. It became the symbol of everything wrong with the power dynamics in Hollywood. The silence, the complicity, the protection of abusers. And then the fallout began. Celebrities who had once proudly stood next to the Cavendishes quietly started unfollowing them, issuing statements of their own. Major studios paused or pulled projects tied to Cavendish Pictures. Brand deals, endorsements, and contracts vanished overnight. Ava sat curled up on Holly's couch, phone buzzing with messages, some from people she hadn't heard from in years, others from strangers offering support. Lawyers reached out. News outlets requested interviews. She barely had time to process it all. Then came the real blow. A bombshell report from a major network confirmed everything Jason's team had uncovered, and more. Multiple women had now come forward with their own stories about William. The LAPD had opened an official investigation. Gregory Cavendish, the untouchable icon, was now facing federal scrutiny for financial crimes. Charlotte? Silent. No spin, no public statement, just total deafening silence. It was the first time in decades the Cavendishes didn't have control over the story. Ava set her phone down and took a deep breath. Holly stared at her, wide-eyed. "You did it." Ava gave a tired smile. "We did it." But she knew this wasn't the finish line. The Cavendishes would regroup. They'd try to salvage their legacy, shift blame, twist the truth. But now, for the first time, they were the ones on the defensive, and Ava wasn't about to back down. The next morning, Ava woke to her phone buzzing nonstop. It was still dark outside, but LA never really sleeps, and neither did the media storm now swallowing the Cavendishes whole. She rubbed her eyes and glanced at the screen. Missed calls, dozens of unread messages. Holly stirred on the couch. "Reporters again?" Ava scrolled. "Not just them. Lawyers, execs, people I haven't heard from in years. It's happening. They're falling apart." "Turn on the news," Holly said, sitting up. They flipped to the morning broadcast, and the images on the screen felt surreal. Gregory Cavendish, the face of a Hollywood empire, entering a federal building surrounded by lawyers. Charlotte, tight-lipped and glaring as cameras swarmed her in front of their Beverly Hills estate. William? Nowhere to be found. The news anchor's voice cut in. "The once untouchable Cavendish family is facing the biggest scandal in Hollywood history. Allegations of abuse, fraud, and decades of cover-ups have emerged following the release of the explosive documentary Hollywood Privilege. An official criminal investigation is now underway." Ava stared at the screen, a strange calm washing over her. For years, she'd lived with the fear of what they might do if she dared to speak out. But now, the power had shifted. Holly turned to her with a grin. "Do you realize what you've done?" Ava nodded slowly. "Yeah," she whispered, "but it's not over yet." By the afternoon, the floodgates had burst wide open, and there was no going back. William Cavendish's legal team finally issued a statement, brushing off the slap caught on camera at the rehearsal dinner as a moment of emotional distress, and accusing Ava of exploiting private matters for personal gain. Ava let out a bitter laugh when she read it. So predictable. But the spin wasn't sticking. By that afternoon, at least 5 more women had come forward with allegations against William. 2 had already filed police reports. Their stories were strikingly similar to Ava's. Controlling behavior, manipulation, abuse masked behind the shiny facade of wealth and fame. Then came the financial blow. A leaked internal audit from Cavendish Pictures revealed years of shady dealings, tax evasion, offshore accounts, and forged contracts that had kept the company afloat. Jason and his investigative team had pulled it all together. Within hours, the Department of Justice announced a formal investigation into Gregory Cavendish and the studio. Cavendish Pictures' stock tanked. Their biggest investors bailed. By nightfall, Gregory had officially stepped down as CEO of the empire he built. Ava and Holly sat in front of the TV, stunned. Holly finally let out a breathless laugh. "Ava," You just took down one of the most powerful families in Hollywood." Ava shook her head. "No, they did that to themselves. I just made sure the world saw it." The real shock came the next morning. Federal agents raided Cavendish Pictures' headquarters in downtown LA. Live footage showed boxes of files, hard drives, and computers being carried out by men in suits. At the same time, a last-minute emergency board meeting was called. With no defenders left, shareholders voted to strip the Cavendish family of all control. Just like that, it was the end of an era. And then, at noon, the final headline dropped. William Cavendish had been arrested. Ava froze as the footage played on screen. William, in a dark suit, hands cuffed behind his back, was led into an LAPD vehicle. He kept his head down, ignoring the reporters shouting his name. The anchor's voice cut in. "William Cavendish, heir to the Cavendish media empire, has been taken into custody following multiple allegations of abuse and assault. His arrest marks the dramatic fall of a family that has ruled over Hollywood for decades." Ava covered her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. Not from sadness, but relief. It was really over. Holly sat back. "I never thought I'd see this day." Ava nodded slowly. Neither did they. The days that followed were a blur. The fallout from Hollywood privilege swept through the industry like a tidal wave. Studios scrambled to sever ties with the Cavendishs. Celebrities who once stood proudly beside them now rushed to condemn them publicly. Even Charlotte, who had always pulled the strings quietly from behind the scenes, disappeared from view. Gregory was formally charged with fraud and corruption. William faced multiple felony counts for domestic abuse. Cavendish Pictures, once one of the most powerful names in film, filed for bankruptcy. And Charlotte? She vanished without a word. No press release, no damage control, just silence. One evening, Ava stood on the rooftop of Holly's apartment, staring out at the glowing LA skyline. The city felt different now. For so long, it had felt suffocating, like it was closing in on her. But tonight, it felt open, clean, like she could finally breathe. She had spent years trying to mold herself into what Hollywood wanted, polished, poised, silent. But now she saw the truth. She never needed their validation. She didn't need to play by their rules. She had stood up to the most powerful family in the business, and won. "Ava!" Jason's voice called out from behind her. She turned to see him stepping onto the roof, holding a bottle of champagne. "Thought we should celebrate." Holly grinned, already grabbing glasses. "Damn right we should." Ava smiled, lifting her glass as the three of them clinked. Behind them, the city stretched out in gold and neon. The Cavendishes had built their empire on silence and fear, but not anymore. Now, Ava had made sure they'd never be able to silence anyone again. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, casting a golden glow across the skyline, something felt new. The Cavendish's reign was over. The lies, the manipulation, the unchecked power, it had all come crashing down. Their studio was in ruins. Their names were tainted. The illusion of untouchable Hollywood royalty had finally shattered. But for Ava, this wasn't the end. She had won the battle, yes. But the war? The one against the system that let it all happen in the first place? That was just getting started. The first thing she did was reclaim her name. In the weeks after the documentary aired and the Cavendish empire collapsed, Ava filed lawsuits to challenge the lies they had spread about her. With all the evidence now public, the rulings were swift and in her favor. Their attempts to label her as an unhinged ex, just another woman scorned, completely crumbled once the truth came out. And more than clearing her own name, Ava made sure that no woman had to face that fight alone again. With Holly and Jason by her side, Ava launched the Bennett Foundation for Justice, a non-profit built to support survivors of abuse in high-powered industries. It was created for women like her, silenced by money, fear, and connections. The foundation provided legal aid, therapy, and protection for those courageous enough to speak out. And they did. People found their voice because Ava had used hers. One by one, more survivors stepped forward, sharing stories about directors, producers, actors. Names that had gone untouched for years were now under real public scrutiny. For the first time, people with unchecked power were facing actual consequences. Hollywood wasn't just witnessing change, it was being transformed from the inside out. Then came the final blow to the Cavendish empire, and it came from an unexpected place. James Thompson, CEO of Thomson Global, the very executive the Cavendishes once tried to trap in a shady merger, stepped into the spotlight. When their empire crumbled, he didn't try to save it. He bought it just to take it apart. Within weeks, Cavendish Pictures was gone. The studio that once stood tall as a Hollywood giant was dissolved. Its assets were sold off, its name erased. The last of the Cavendish legacy turned to dust. Ava stood in front of the former studio lot, watching as workers removed the oversized gold Cavendish letters from the building's entrance. It felt surreal. Holly stood beside her. "You really did it," she whispered. Ava let out a quiet breath. "We did." She had walked away from the Cavendishs with nothing but the truth. And now? She was walking away with something far more powerful. Her freedom, her strength, and the knowledge that she had helped change the course of an entire industry. 6 months later, Ava sat in her office, her new office. Not in a hospital, not in a clinic, but at the Bennett Foundation's headquarters in downtown LA. Ironically, the building had once belonged to Cavendish Pictures. Now, it was a safe haven for survivors. She leaned back in her chair, taking in the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The past year had cost her everything: her job, her reputation, her sense of safety. But in return, she had created something real, something that mattered. Holly walked in, grinning as she held up a bottle of wine. "Guess who just landed on the Forbes 40 Under 40 list?" Ava raised an eyebrow. "Me?" "Damn right," Holly said, already grabbing 2 glasses. Ava chuckled, shaking her head. She had never needed Hollywood's approval. But seeing her name, not as someone's fiancée, not as the woman who exposed a scandal, but as a leader making real change, it felt like things had finally come full circle. Holly handed her a glass and raised her own. "To Ava Bennett, the woman who took down an empire and built something stronger in its place." Ava clinked her glass with Holly's, a smile tugging at her lips. "To never being silenced again." The city stretched out before her, no longer a cage. Now it was a clean slate. Ava Bennett was free, and she was just getting started. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more powerful journeys like this one. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your story too. And if this resonated with you or someone you know, share it. You never know who might need to hear it. Keep watching. There's another powerful story waiting for you. Click on the next video and we'll see you there.